Hello, everyone. This is Ryan, or you may know me by my KSPB DJ name, Rybo. And today I will be interviewing Clem Shute, who happens to be my grandfather. So let future me take it away. So, hello, everyone knows
Hello.
I'm Ryan. This is Clem Shute. For anyone that doesn't know, he's my grandfather. And let's just jump right into it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and the work you did as an environmental lawyer?
Well, when I was in law school, I thought I was going to be a tax lawyer, and I took every class I could take in tax law. And then I went to work for the California State Attorney General in doing tax law. And one day they came into my office and other people's offices and said there was a new agency created called the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission. And its job was to protect San Francisco Bay from being destroyed by fill and office buildings and residences industry. And would somebody like to represent them? Because it was a state agency, and by law, the attorney general was their lawyer. And I volunteered. It just sounded interesting. And I knew nothing. There was no such thing as environmental law. And I started with that agency, which did some pioneering work and had some pioneering litigation that ended up in the California Supreme Court. And I ended up doing environmental law and kind of being in at the beginning, which was really lucky for me. And as you well know, I started with two other guys, a law firm in 1980, doing public interest environmental law. And we started off with three of us, and we're going to a brunch. And I hope that Nathan and your dad are going to be able to go with me now Saturday. The firm's hosting a lunch in Berkeley, and they're now 30 lawyers doing the same kind of work.
It's grown.
And our mission was to do environmental good wherever we could by representing, like the Sierra Club or the League to Save Lake Tahoe or the Audubon Society. But we also represent a lot of public agencies who get in fights with other public agencies or with industry where there's a good guy and a bad guy. And we try to be on the good guy side. But a lot of stuff is gray. So it's sometimes hard to tell, if there's some absolute good or bad. But we've been pretty good about sticking with what we think is environmental good. And I'm very, very proud of that.
That's great. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, because you started basically at the very beginning of environmental law. Were you just
Yeah.
kind of thrown into it, or did you have a certain love for the environment that motivated you?
Maybe down deep when they came down the hall and said, "Would you like to represent this agency?" I had some instinct about it, but I never really thought about it. And I just grew into it. When this agency was created, there were proposals to create housing for 15,000 people in the Bay by creating fill, making islands and peninsulas. There were proposals to extend downtown San Francisco into the Bay. And those all seemed so obviously wrong from an environmental point of view that I guess got caught up in it and became a passion. And an attorney general was elected shortly after this who wanted to emphasize environmental law. And he asked me to head up a program of environmental lawyers to try to get better laws enacted and enforce the laws on the books. So I got into that. Um, and some of the things that happened, for example, was the United States Steel wanted to build a high rise. For those in your audience who know the ferry building in San Francisco, it would have been in the water in the ferry building next to the Bay Bridge, several hundred feet high on Bay Fill. And there's all kinds of creatures and eelgrass and things in the bay that we need to protect as much as possible. Well, a lot of powerful interests, including the city of San Francisco, wanted that building. So it was kind of this little new agency against the giants, and we prevailed, stopped the building from being ever pursued.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff that I enjoyed. It was taking on major interests with a lot of money and influence and trying to defeat them or end up in a acceptable compromise.
That's great. Yeah. If it's insane to think that like the water levels could even rise that much, and that such simple things could prevent that. So shifting towards helping the environment, and to a specific instance, what was the work you did in Lake Tahoe and like the Keep Tahoe Blue movement?
Well, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency is a pretty unique government agency. It's created by identical laws being passed by California and Nevada, that same identical law being passed by Congress and signed by the president under the Interstate Commerce Clause. It allows states to cooperate. And so they created this agency way back in the 60s because Lake Tahoe, as most people probably know, is famous for its clarity. Mark Twain commented about he'd never seen waters as blue as that. And at that time, before there was major development, you could see down about 150 feet in Lake Tahoe without, going to the point where it was opaque. And when I started, it was down to 60 or 70 feet of visibility. And the reason is that erosion, little particles that come off the land, little pieces of dirt that flow into the lake from streams, from people's driveways, they go into the street and then they go into a channel and they up in the lake. That causes loss of clarity. And so this agency had to figure out a way to try and regulate land use and come up with environmental improvement programs that would ameliorate the loss of clarity. So over time, the clarity is back to about 80 feet, but with climate change, the lake is warming. It's an alpine lake, and it always has had very cold water. It has a granite watershed, so it's almost all rock under there. And with the warming of the water, the scientists will tell you the lake doesn't turn over, the surface gets warmer, algae grows, and that's going to affect and is affecting clarity. But some of the things that I had represented the League to Save Lake Tahoe before going on the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency board. And one of the things that happened was they wanted to build another casino in Nevada, a high-rise casino, and we sued to stop it. And that was very controversial. California coming into Nevada to try to stop something from being built. But again, we were able to prevail. And one of the funny things about that was I was still in the Attorney General's office, and I sitting there and the phone rings and I pick it up and he says, "Hi, this is Mike. What the hell are you doing over here?" I said, "Mike, who the hell are you?" He says, "I'm Mike. I'm the governor of Nevada." And I've come to realize that Nevada is such a small state that everybody knows everybody by first name. So he thought, well, I'm Mike. Everybody knows who Mike is. So that was kind of a funny little incident as part of that whole drama.
Yeah, because the work you did in Lake Tahoe must have been a huge accomplishment. So going off of kind of that, what work have you done that you're the most proud of? Because you've obviously prevented a lot of environmental destruction.
Well, one of the things that I'm very proud of is the East Shore State Park, the McLaughlin State Park. It extends from the Bay Bridge in Oakland up to Richmond, about 10 or 12 miles. And I'd forgotten how big it is. But that area was on bay fill mostly from landfills, garbage dumps that had been created in the World War II and up to the 60s. And big companies owned it. And they were going to build high-rise office buildings and houses out there. And over a long period of time, a lot of negotiations, a lot of struggle, I represented the East Bay Regional Park District, and we bought the land. We negotiated a price and we bought the land. And it's now a state park. And the state park, they didn't want it to be a state park because the state said, hey, we build parks out in the middle of nowhere where nobody is so people can appreciate the wilderness. We don't want to have a park in a city where we have all these problems of contamination and litter and too many people. So we were not only struggling against developers, we were struggling against the state, which didn't want it. But the East Bay Regional Park District is a great entity. They built a lot of fabulous parks, and we were able to deliver the land for that. And now if you go there, there are hiking trails. It's a wonderful experience, and that land is all protected. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. I didn't actually know that story. That's pretty interesting. You mentioned like the word struggle, and off of that note, what was the biggest challenge to overcome in your career?
Well, when I was with the Attorney General's office and I was in charge of what we call the environmental unit, and there were 9 lawyers, and we were charged by the Attorney General to enforce California's laws. And then a conservative Republican was elected to the Attorney General job, George Deukmejian, who many people will remember eventually became governor. And he didn't believe in what we were doing at all. And the program was discretionary. The attorney general didn't have to do that kind of thing. So he abolished the program. So then I had to face the choice. I could have stayed and gone into some other section, the criminal section or business law or consumer protection. But I really didn't want to do that. I was invested in environmental law at that time. So it was a very hard challenge because these two younger guys, Mark Mahaly and Mark Weinberger, because we became Shute, Mahaly, and Weinberger, came to me and said, why don't we just go out, create our own firm, keep on doing what we're doing? And I was around 40 years old. Um, my oldest daughter, your mom, was, I think, graduating from high school. And the idea of giving up an income and going into a practice was pretty daunting. A lot of people who change jobs in the law business, they take their clients with them. But when you work for the state, you don't take your clients with you. You start from zero. And we owned a home. The other two guys didn't. And so we needed financing because how would we pay for our first, couple of months of rent and a secretary and equipment and a library? So we went to a bank and the bank said, yeah, we'll give you a line of credit, but we need a lien on your house, a mortgage on your house to secure our loan. So I had to think, well, can we put a loan on the house? If we can't make the payments, then we lose the house. So that was the toughest thing I've ever had to face, is just the uncertainty and um, stress of, making a big decision like that. Turned out to be the right decision for sure.
Yeah, that would probably be pretty stressful, transitioning from working for the government to kind of cultivating your own business and firm. And that'd be pretty difficult. But again, like you said, uh, it was probably pretty satisfying to see all the great work that Shoot Mahaly Weinberger has done over the years.
Well,
Uh,
it is great
mhm.
to see all that. And a lot of people have done a lot of really good things. Um, uh, and when we first started, people that we knew from working in the environmental field while we were at the state, they realized what we had done. And so they deliberately threw business our way. So we were able to get started. And actually, as it turns out, it was not much of a risk. We didn't ever have to use that line of credit. So never had to really face defaulting on the loan and losing the house or anything like that. So it turned out very well. But when you're thinking ahead and you don't know what's going to happen, that's makes it a tough decision.
Yeah. So, fast forwarding a little bit, uh, down the line, what do you do? Still do work involved with the environment? What do you do now?
Well, I was on the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency board until about 2 years ago. And then, as you know, we moved down here to Tubac, Arizona. It's a high Sonoran desert. And I guess I can't stay away from this stuff. So there's a group down here called the Santa Cruz Valley Citizens Council, which is kind of the spokes group, the community group that speaks for Tubac, because we're unincorporated. We're not a city. We're in the county. And there are many issues around here. We had a cattle ranch go in that was going to bring in thousands of cattle. And we have a river that runs by, the Santa Cruz River, very delicate river. A good chunk of it runs underground. And there's a big risk of methane gas emissions and pollution to the river. And so our group got involved in that. And the first thing I learned was that Arizona laws are nothing like California laws. They are nothing. I mean, you don't have the same ability to regulate things or control things, and property rights are premium. You can't interfere with people's right to do what they want. So that was a struggle. We didn't do too well with that. And we've been involved with large ranches in the area that could possibly be subdivided, and working on making sure that there's what's called smart growth, where if there's going to be growth, you try to channel it to portions of the property that are not as sensitive as other portions, like protecting wetland areas or areas that are known to be habitat for animals. And I'm trying to think of other stuff. The river that we have here is really unusual. It runs into Mexico and then comes back up north. The river runs north, Santa Cruz River. And the river, it consists of effluent, treated effluent from Mexico. it's been drained by all the farming and agriculture that's gone on over the years. So it doesn't flow except for this treated effluent that comes from Mexico, is treated in the United States and then released in the river. So ironically, we're dependent on sewage effluent for the health of our river, and we have to monitor that and make sure that, you know, the sewage plant is operating correctly, that leaks don't get into the river system, and all that's challenging. So there's a lot to do here. It's a new vocabulary because it's a new set of laws. I never thought I'd be learning about CAFCO, concentrated animal feeding operations, and things like that. But you know, you can't play golf every day,
Nope.
and so that keeps the brain cells moving. And I'm happy to do it. People say, "Hey, why do you do that? You could just take it easy." I said, "Well, then I would become an idiot. So, got to do something to stay sharp."
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's actually amazing that just a job when you were working for the eternal Attorney General morphed and transformed all the way into a passion that you still are pursuing in retirement.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's
Yeah,
life
that's true.
happens. Yeah.
Life happens. My,
So
go
uh,
ahead.
as we're concluding this interview, I have one last question for you. Do you have any advice for people trying to pursue a career in environmental law or just law in general?
Yes, I do. And that is, if you know, for example, that you're interested in environmental law or environmental issues, even if you want to become like a environmental scientist or consultant, what you need to do is learn everything you can learn by reading and becoming involved in groups. And what you need to do is volunteer. So, for example, at the Sierra Club or the Audubon Society or your local chapter of this or that, to Save the Snail, volunteer, because you don't get paid. They don't have money, but you get to know the issues, you get to know people. They can help you later on when you're needing recommendations, or they may steer you someplace you would never heard of. And so I'm a big advocate of people who are interested in a particular subject, finding areas where they can go volunteer. You can volunteer for government agencies. They have interns, and you learn a lot, and you get a lot of responsibility because everybody's so busy they can't do it themselves. So if there's somebody over there, hand it to them. You go do it, and you learn a lot. So I think that learning the subject you're interested in from as much as you can read, and volunteering are two really important things to do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, and good to see you, Ryan.
Good to see you too. Okay, well, bye everyone watching this from somewhere else.